Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and I am delighted to have with me today Lazarus Baptiste, the Nightographer. Laz, man, delighted that we can have this happen.
Awesome, Hugh. This is awesome.
The story is that Laz, actually his wife Jamie and my wife Claudia, my partner Claudia, met last year at an event, and it was a beautiful thing. Within minutes, Laz had pulled out his iPad and was showing us something that blew my mind, and that's what I want to talk about today. I want to know, Laz, what the heck were you thinking when you shot Sublime Manhattan?
Well, first of all, it is freaking awesome to be interviewed by you, Hugh. I've been watching you for a few years, and it's pretty good to find myself sitting here on YouTube. Somebody will be watching me.
Well, the privilege is mine, man. It's just a blast.
Awesome. So what was I thinking when I shot Sublime Manhattan? It was one of those moments where I was leaving work and I'm coming in from Manhattan, going into New Jersey by the Lincoln Tunnel.
Right.
That day, there was a thunderstorm going on. Cats, dogs, water buffaloes falling out of the sky. It was crazy.
I remember that day.
And then there was a guy named Noah. So that day, there was a crazy thunderstorm happening in Manhattan. I go into the Lincoln Tunnel. By the time I come out of the tunnel, it's bright sunshine. And it's
on the Jersey side?
Yeah, on the Jersey side. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. And I'm coming up the up-ramp. Okay.
And for those of you who don't know, when you come out of the Lincoln Tunnel, it comes around a curve, and for a brief moment, you have this incredible panorama of lower Manhattan unfold in front of you from a reasonably high elevation.
Yeah. Yep. And as I'm coming up, I saw what became Sublime Manhattan. It was just an amazing view, because what happened technically was that the storm was going from the New Jersey side over to the Manhattan side. And since it had stopped in New Jersey, the clouds were falling apart and the storm was ending, but it had not yet ended over Manhattan. So it was sunshine here, thunderstorm right on the other side of the river.
And a clear view between them.
Yes, exactly.
That's amazing.
Unobstructed.
That's amazing.
The clouds started to fall apart, because at first the clouds are just ominous gray, just a massive gray. And as the sunshine is piercing through, the clouds start to form apart, and you start to see textures coming out of the cloud. And that's what Sublime Manhattan is.
Well, so there are a number of things that you were thinking. And I want to parse this, because I think it's so important. You guys hear me talk about this all the time. Yes, it's about the gear, but no, it's not about the gear. It's about the people. And this is a perfect example where it was first about Laz. It became about the gear, but the gear never divorced from the man. So the first thing is, you come out and you have the presence of mind to see. This is what Alfred Eisenstadt meant when he talked about the photographer's eye. So many people have talked about the photographer's eye. It's seeing something worth capturing. The second thing that you did was recognize what it is that you were seeing, something extraordinary. The third thing that you did was say to yourself, I need to photograph this.
Yeah.
And the fourth thing that you did was actually do that. So take us through that.
Yeah. I went over to Weehawken, because that's the area where the Lincoln Tunnel is. I went to Hamilton Avenue. And on Hamilton, you can have that unobstructed view of the city. I knew exactly the spot because I had shot there before. So I pulled up there and I had my camera with me. At the time, I was shooting the Sony NEX7. This was in 2013.
Okay, so that's an APS-C camera.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I had the power zoom on there, I think the 18 to 200 or something like that, the power zoom lens. It's a good lens for a great range, but not the sharpest corner-to-corner lens.
And just to be fair, guys, that is generally true when you get into long range zooms. There is a trade-off for that range.
Exactly. So I took out the camera at the time. Now, just to give you a little background, guys, that happened twice. So this is the first occurrence of Sublime Manhattan.
Okay, so remember, guys, OCD is very important when you want to take a great shot.
So I pull up, I take out the camera, and I squeeze off like 4 shots, okay? Because it was happening so fast, I wanted to get as big an image as I could. I first shot it wide angle, but I wanted more detail. And I knew that that 24 megapixels wasn't going to be enough for what I wanted to capture. So I flipped the camera in portrait mode, and I fired off 4 shots.
So you were anticipating that you were going to stitch it together.
Yes.
And again, what I love about this is that you had intent. You knew precisely what you wanted to do.
Yeah. At the time, I didn't necessarily have the know-how. It was just at that moment, I had been reading about stitching. And at that moment, I knew I wanted to try one of those stitches for this because it was so impressive. I wanted to share it. I wanted to see it again. I wanted to relive it, the moment, the emotion, be able to share it. And I did not quite have the skill yet. My skill and my ambition were not congruous. They weren't working together.
Welcome to the party, man. Isn't it always that way?
Yeah.
Isn't it always that way that as we develop, our ambitions grow, and it is so often a case of, what's the phrase, our reach exceeding our grasp?
Yeah. What happened that first time that I shot Sublime Manhattan, I became obsessed with rendering, with panoramic work, and with capturing moments like that again. So I started to do my research. I got the right tripod. I got the panoramic head, because when I tried to stitch that first one, it fell apart.
Why?
Because the lens was not sharp corner to corner.
Of course.
Okay.
Of
and
course.
I shot it somewhere around 5.6. I should have
Okay.
shot it at about f11.
For more depth of field,
Exactly.
but you were still in the sweet spot at 5.6, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Once you get to f8 even, but really f11, f16,
Yeah.
f16 is where you start to get diffraction. Yeah.
But like f11 could have still done, because I do a good amount of my shooting at f11. I still, I lose a little bit in the center, but I get sharper extreme corners sometimes at f11, depending on the lens.
The good news is you could slow down the shutter speed rather than jack the ISO to compensate.
Exactly. So the first time that I shot it, I was not happy with the result. Okay. It looked good if I printed small. So I use it on my business card now, the
That's very
original
small.
shot. You know? Looks amazing at that size.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of errors. And I wanted, being a bit of a perfectionist, I wanted to rectify that and to try to get it right.
Yeah.
So I started obsessing about panoramic work, started obsessing about how to shoot a panorama properly.
So you're not only talking about stitching, are you? You're also talking about focus stacking or
Yes.
exposure stacking?
Yes, exposure stacking. I got into luminosity masking. I got into exposure blending. I got into like focus stacking. All of these different disciplines I'm applying now in my work, you know, and it took that impetus, that day, that being floored, that being wowed to be like, oh my God. Like, then it started the obsession and I don't want to say my failure, but my inability to capture it the way that I would have wanted to made me want to really learn the craft of panoramic work.
That's beautiful. Well,
You know?
look, I mean, pick the cliche. Life is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, or, okay.
I'm learning.
Or it's as Thomas Edison said, it's roughly the same thing.
Yeah.
So failure, I actually see the upside of failure as you're describing it right now.
And the second time, I went looking for that picture again, for those certain set of circumstances to repeat itself. And it took about 9 to 10 months. and it happened again. But that time, since it had happened before and I noted the circumstances that happened weather-wise, I was able to predict it. So the second time it happened, when there was a storm in the city and clear skies over New Jersey, I pulled over, sat there and waited for it. And it took about a half hour and the clouds started to break apart again. And I got the shot that I now present as Sublime Manhattan.
So was that the day that you had to leave work early because you had a tummy ache?
So the second time around, but by that time I had grown as a photographer, grown in my understanding. I was a lot more prepared. I carried the tripod with me. The second time around, I shot it with the Sony A7R. So I had more resolution.
Right.
And I had the Canon 135 f2 with me.
Great lens.
Yeah.
Great lens.
Awesome lens.
And now you were shooting with a prime, still had reach.
Exactly. And I was able to shoot it, the shot that is currently Sublime Manhattan. And I had the skill set 9 months later to put it together properly, had the right lens, had the right everything. And that's the shot that I tell everyone started my obsession with panoramic work, my obsession with immersive photography.
And your obsession with night photography, which is why you are the Nightographer.
Yes.
The thing about Laz's work is that there's simply no way that we can really show you just how much resolution he's been able to pull together. It is an immersive experience. Mm-hmm. When you pulled out that iPad and said, let me show you something. Yeah. And I'm looking and I'm going like this, and it's just more and more and mm-hmm. more. I reached a point before I got to the end where I just said, I get it. Yeah. That's enough. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, one of my images was printed by a friend of mine, Stefan Fielder, from Salon Iris out of Vienna. He is an expert in large format printing. Awesome guy. He printed one of my images, and it was a world record contender for largest exhibition quality print ever mounted in frame.
How big was it?
He printed it 8.2 feet tall by 31.8 feet across at 1,200 DPI.
Wow.
And it held up like this close.
We've talked about this a number of times before, but the thing about the orthodoxy around image size versus mm-hmm. viewing distance was an orthodoxy you weren't willing to abide by.
Yes. When people talk about the ideal viewing distance, okay, it could be, let's say, for a painting. Let's not personalize it too much and talk about our photography and photographers so nobody gets offended. Let's talk about paintings. As you get closer to a painting, you'll start to notice the brushstrokes. You lose what the painter was showing you because now you're looking at the individual little sections. You need to kind of step back to see it the way it was intended to be shown. But what I found for me in real life, I tend to like to get closer to things I like. I don't want to step away from it. If I see a picture I like, a painting or whatever, I want to get closer. And as you get closer to something in real life, like if I get closer to that, I can read more details on what's here. I can see more. I wanted my images to have that same ability so that you could go in and see more detail and never have it fall apart.
What's so interesting about that is that it's not just about more detail. It's about different things. When you talk about painting, you're talking about the difference between a layperson appreciating mm-hmm. Sunday in the Park, Seurat, and a student of the art who wants to understand how the heck did he use the pointillist technique to create that. In the case of an urban scape, it's not simply that you get to see the brick detail on the Chrysler building, mm-hmm. but you see the window with the half-open shade with the person in it. Yeah. So you're seeing something else. And we've talked about this before too. It's one of the reasons why Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock is one of my favorite films mm-hmm. of all times. It is essentially a stage play. Yeah, it's basically one set.
Absolutely.
And yet you see so much of life through that rear window.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why for me, doing cityscapes lends itself to panoramic work because there's a lot to see, a lot to experience. A city it's organic. There's movement. There's a car going up this street, a person walking down that street. There's a window and somebody watching TV. There's so much to see, so much to kind of titillate the eye.
So many stories that are not actually told, but implied, which is where the viewer's imagination interacts with the objet d'art, and where you get bang.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, what a story. What a great story. What I also like about Sublime Manhattan is that you manage to show an intersection of the built environment, the man-made environment, which in and of itself can be truly awe-inspiring, towering ambition made literally concrete, steel, and glass on the one hand, with the awe-inspiring power of nature on the other.
Absolutely. It's man's great handiwork in the context of what God has made. You know, that's how I see Sublime Manhattan. That's how I see cityscape photography when you include like a wonderful weather moment, a wonderful weather happening, a wonderful weather event. You know, it's that. It's like, wow, within the context of what God can do, the best of man in the context of what God can do. It's like, whoa, you get a beautiful juxtaposition where it's inspiring.
Guys, you need to see his work in real life. We'll do the best that we can to represent through this video some of what he's doing. Laz, if people want to see your work directly, where do they go?
You can go to Lazarus2020.com. LAZARUS 2020.com.
You know I'm going to just put a title in this video, right?
Yeah, but I like doing this.
Yeah, you do. It's just like sign language. It's awesome. What a privilege and a pleasure.
Hugh.
So enjoyed this, man.
I enjoyed it too. This is awesome.
For
I'm on Three Blind Men and an Elephant. For Three Blind Men, I have to bring out the baritone. For Three Blind Men and an Elephant, I'm Hugh Brownstone, and that's Lazarus Baptiste. See you next time.
I have rhythm.